A message to all Orlando Magic fans: we ride at dawn. We need answers, Jeff Weltman. The Orlando Magic decided to go out to lunch during the trade deadline, and the front office did not make a move when it felt like the most apparent and obvious thing to do. While every other team in the NBA got aggressive and tried to get better, especially after the Luka Doncic trade and a few other dominoes fell, the Orlando Magic did not get better at the trade deadline. They made zero moves. Today we're going to be talking about what exactly was the potential reasoning for the Orlando Magic not making a trade, and also what is just the overall feeling that is going around the Orlando Magic fan base as the Magic again come up empty at the trade deadline. But first, guys, welcome in. This is Magic Digest, coming out with Orlando Magic basketball content just about daily here. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. We're going to be talking all things Orlando Magic as the season and beyond continues on. The world hasn't ended just yet, so guys, make sure that you subscribe. The views are doing great. I love the support. I'm loving it, but 23.6% of you guys who are watching the videos consistently are not subscribed, so let's try to get that number up. If you've been watching the videos as of late, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Easiest and best way to help out the channel. All right, let's get straight into it. Oh, the dreaded tweet that pretty much tipped everybody off. I mean, this is at 3:04 from Jason B, but we knew coming into about 15 minutes away from 3 o'clock, nothing was going to happen. The Orlando Magic decided to stand pat, invest in the team that they already have, which honestly isn't really too bad of a decision, but they didn't get better at this trade deadline when it felt like there was some moves to be made. So the Magic made no moves ahead of Thursday's 3 p.m. NBA trade deadline. Now, honestly, guys, I kind of waited to make a video on the trade deadline. I waited a couple hours and then, to get my thoughts together. But also at the same time, the last couple of days, I kind of stopped. I was going to make a video on Anthony Simons, maybe potentially trying to make a run at him, seeing exactly what package was available for him. This was after the Kobe White video, but I held off because I was like, you know what? If I drop this video, then something is going to happen, right? And I'm gonna miss it. Or I'm gonna be way off. I didn't want to make a prediction, but I really did think that this team was going to try to go get somebody. Now, this doesn't mean that they didn't try, because them not trying is definitely a huge guess on my part and any other fan's part, right? But at the same time, they should have. And you guys probably should be pretty livid about this, just about as much as I am, because I think this team is good. But unfortunately, I think that this could be an Achilles heel. Now, you guys are probably on Twitter. You're on, or actually I should say rather, on all the social media platforms talking Orlando Magic basketball, especially if you're here. Six Man Show, shout out to them. Great stuff. At the very worst, they've actually kind of flipped the tune a little bit on the trade stuff. But at the very worst, this is awful roster evaluation. At best, they're showing that they don't really care about what happens this season. So why would we, or why should we? No matter what this team achieves the rest of the season, we will have to ask, what could they have done with more offense? This is actually a great question, and this does bring me into the very first part of the video of should they have made a trade. I think it's pretty obvious that they definitely had some needs that should have been addressed, such as the shooting. I believe we are one of the worst all time. I don't know right now off the top of my head if we are the worst in the NBA, because I think there might be one other team that's right along there. We were in the max 29th in the NBA three-point shooting this season. It's just really poor, and we all know this, that Paolo, Franz, they need a little bit more help. And while this team hasn't been healthy this season, we realize even when they are healthy that this team needs offensive help. We knew this in the offseason. We knew this after the playoff series against the Cavs, and we thought that some of the players were going to be able to progress, and they certainly have. Franz was the number one guy for just over a month for this team. It was really, really good. On his way to the All-Star game if he didn't get hurt. Paolo Banchero started the year off well. Since he's been back, he's just getting back to the groove. I mean, but we're assuming by playoff time or playing time, he's going to be ready. And Jalen Suggs clearly took a step. But still, none of those guys have solved the three-point shooting. I mean, how could you? It's 2025 in the NBA. It's the wild, wild west from the three-point line. I mean, we all know this as well as what the NBA's, big decision coming in the next handful of years or what they're going to do to the offense. I digress. It's tough to have a great shooting team backed by three players who aren't exactly three-point shooters, and those are your best three players. So this team needed some help. We lost Mo Wagner. We didn't have as much bench scoring, and then with Tristan da Silva and Anthony Black's up and down performances, we don't really have a ton of guys who are in the rotation that are going to be able to stretch the floor. We certainly don't have a stretch big right now, a true stretch big that's going to be able to help us. So we're thinking, let's go get some shooting. Maybe we have to deal a guy that we don't want to deal. Maybe we do sacrifice a little bit of the culture. Maybe we have to do one of those things that you don't want to do. See those players go that you don't want to see go, but we saw a lot of different teams do that, so why not do it here? And I certainly understand the sentiment of anybody who is frustrated, because how could you not be? Now, this tweet came just before the trade deadline, so I would love to double check this. So tell me in the comments below if any of these teams did end up making a trade, but obviously the Magic didn't. So if my count is correct, the Magic are one of 4 teams that have not yet got involved in an in-season trade: Nuggets, Timberwolves, and Grizzlies. An hour and 3 minutes remain before the trade deadline passes. Now, obviously the Timberwolves made that huge move prior to the season to trade Karl Anthony Towns. So a lot of the comments were kind of saying, hey, that sort of counts in their defense. But, those teams such as the Nuggets and the Grizzlies are kind of just decently standing right now, and I would say they're not in a mode where they really, really need absolutely to make a deal, just like the Orlando Magic, because we had just such a glaring weakness, such a strong, we need this, and if we get this, there's not a lot of teams that can really stand in our way, that aren't true championship contenders. You're talking like the Boston Celtics or something like that. Or obviously the Cavs and the Thunder, but we're talking, other teams that I think that we could compete with, right? And I think we compete with the Celtics, but you get what I'm trying to say, right? True, top of the line, they're having an amazing season, or they are the defending champions, right? If we get that 3-point shooting, we are able to compete. Well, this organization didn't do it. Now, I don't want to beat a dead horse too much, because I want to get to the other part of this, and that is what exactly was the reasoning for no trade by the Orlando Magic. I think there are reasons. I don't think that this is just a one-sided thing, but I think as time has gone on over the last week or so, since the Luka Doncic blockbuster news, I think there were a lot of NBA teams who, waiting for some of those dominoes to fall, were actually very aggressive. I mean, you got to think, some of these teams are strapped. They are really, they don't have much to work with. But even a team like the Milwaukee Bucks didn't want to trade Chris Middleton, but they had to fix their cap situation. They just felt like, get a guy who's younger, get a guy who can kind of produce at the same level, and we're just going to go from there. And then we're going to also build for the future. I think, unfortunately for the Orlando Magic, this could be one of those times where we look back at this trade deadline and say, man, as the Six Man Show tweeted, as they so often do, something that was pretty agreeable, in my opinion. You ask, what was it for this season? I have been preaching that the Achilles heel of this team is shooting, and it will come back to bite us, and unfortunately we did not figure that out in the trade deadline. I wanted to bring in really quick, before I do get to the other side of this, the history of the trade deadline for this organization, because we do sort of have a history, but that's why this also was kind of, it's not extensive, but that's also why this was kind of unusual in my opinion, especially because it felt like we could really benefit from it. 2018 traded away Elfrid Payton for a 2018 second-round pick. Jared Vanderbilt traded shortly after the draft to Denver. 2019, Markelle Fultz was acquired in exchange for Jonathan Simmons, 2020 first-round pick, who ended up being Tyrese Maxey. 2019 second-round pick, Talen Horton-Tucker, traded on draft night. 2020, James Ennis was acquired in exchange for a 2020 second-round pick. And then 2021, I think we all kind of know that was a complete 180 for this franchise. We were able to trade Aaron Gordon, Evan Fournier, and Nikola Vucevic, and then obviously we ended up seeing, I believe, Aaron Gordon right around that time as well. It's not listed here for some reason, but the Magic traded in 2022 a 2023 second-round pick, ended up being Andre Jackson Jr. in exchange for Bol Bol and a couple other players, one other player, and then a 2028 second-round pick, and then 2023 the Magic acquired Pat Beverly, but he was waived obviously in exchange for Mo Bamba and a 2028 second-round pick. So that's the history. It's not crazy, but as we know, since 2021, this team hasn't really faced very many roadblocks. So unfortunately, you would have thought that with about the biggest roadblock that we faced so far this year, and that's a disappointing potential end of this season, that we would have been more aggressive. Now, I do want to get into really quick the other side of this and why this team potentially didn't make a trade. And I understand kind of the reasoning and why you might think that this team shouldn't make a trade. Well, it is true that you can't really properly assess this Orlando Magic basketball team when none of the 3 guys have played with each other on a consistent basis. Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero. That's where your money is going, and we have not seen all 3 of them on the court consistently whatsoever this season. So it's tough to judge some of the role players in their true roles when you don't have those top 3 guys in. Also, Cole Anthony, a guy who at one point was skyrocketing his trade value after slumping earlier in the year almost seems like he's too valuable to trade as far as culture, Magic family, and he's also a very good piece and one of the top guys off the bench. And you might need him for depth. And I think with the unfortunate slump of a guy like Anthony Black or up and down play, you might not get as much for him, but also at the same time, you might not feel comfortable with trading away Cole Anthony and keeping Anthony Black when it comes to the playoffs if you're just going to get a guy in the front court. We can't deal Wendell Carter Jr., and there's some other guys who are on very team-friendly contracts who I understand why this team might want to keep them for just one extra year. But it does feel like this team is kind of not phoning it in, but they're not going to address the big reason why this team probably will get bounced at a certain point in the playoffs and not achieve their ultimate goal, and that is because they are just too poor of a shooting team. And it is too dangerous, in my opinion, to leave this up to chance, especially when we get to a first-round matchup against a team that could potentially have home court and could also potentially just straight up be better. And the one way that you can beat a better team, just a better basketball team, is you can get hot from three in a series or in 2 games and steal a couple games on the road. Unfortunately, that will probably not be the case for the Orlando Magic. It's going to have to be that same grinded out defensive style and then lean on those star guys. So hopefully we provide them with enough help, with just Jamahl Mosley's genius and everything else that would come along with that and game planning and so on. But unfortunately, no moves at the trade deadline, and I am disappointed. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about the trade deadline, what you end up thinking about no moves, and what you would have done as the general manager of the Orlando Magic. But that's all the time I have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe. Helps the channel easiest and best way to do so. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, sticking around. Longer video today. But I will see you guys next time with more Orlando Magic basketball content.